Time to connect to Notion using API. Hey everyone, what's up? I'm Fergie. This video is part 2 of cloning a very well-known article sharing app that you've probably used before. In this video, I'll show you exactly how to set up API requests for Notion, as well as how to set up social login. Let's get started. If you watched part 1, then you've already seen we've got our design set up in XD, and I went through all of the different Bravo tags that you need to make the functionality work. If you've not seen that, then definitely go back and watch it if you're looking for the Bravo tags, because right now we are going to hop into Notion and I'm going to show you exactly how you can use it as your database. So this is my Notion page, and all I've done is insert a database table. I have a few records here and just a couple of columns. It's really pretty simple. I have the headline of the article, the author's name, photo of the author, the article itself, a date it was posted on, the read time, a cover image, and then I have these two columns here for bookmarked and bookmarked state. Now these are really important if you're wanting to do that liked, favorite, bookmark functionality, whereby we can save an article from the main feed into our own little list that we want to go back and read later. So this column here, bookmarked, is just a checkbox, and then this one next to it here is a formula. So you'll see here I've just used the checkbox property type, and for this one here it is a formula. Now if I just click here, I'll be able to show you what I have done to make this work, and yes, you do need both for this to be fully functioning. But don't worry, it's not too complicated. The formula that you're going to want to enter is if prop bookmarked, or for you, whatever you have named this column here, then you're going to want to add active and default. So those are the two states that it could be, because a check mark is either checked or unchecked, and it's going to match these up. So you'll see this is not checked, so this says default. If I check this, it's then going to say active. Once you have your Notion database page all set up, you're going to want to head over to the integrations page. You can find this at notion.so/my-integrations. So you'll see I have a few here that I've already tested. So let me take you through how to actually create this. And it is really simple. You're going to hit create new integration, give it a name, and you don't need to upload anything here if you don't want to. I haven't, and it's perfectly fine. I'm going to give it all the capabilities to read, update, and insert. These are the type of changes that can be made. Obviously, we want to read the data. That's how we get it and display it. We're going to want to be able to update it. That's how we can bookmark our favorites or likes. And then also insert is if you wanted to be able to create new records and new content from your app. So just leave all of those checked. And for this, you can set this to your preference. I'm going to go with this second one here, and then just hit submit. And then what it's going to do is just give you this internal integration token. And this is your authorization token. So we're going to need this when we set up the data collection. Now that this is set up, we need to share the right database page with the integration. So I'm going to head back over to my page here and click the share button, invite, and you'll see my integration that I've just set up. I can share it, hit invite, and then you'll see all my integrations here. I've shared it with all of them because I've tested this a couple of times. And as long as that's here, then you are ready to set up the data collection in Bravo. So once you're back in Bravo and you've logged in, you're going to want to go and create a new collection. And we're going to start from scratch with this one. There isn't a wizard, but don't worry. I'm going to take you through step by step. Give it a name, and you can optionally add a description. Now, just in case you get stuck, there is a really helpful help page over on the Bravo Studio Help Center. And you can see here, this is telling you exactly what you need to do to get all of the data from Notion. So if you want to use this along with the video, I'd highly recommend it. So you'll see here, we've already set up our integration. Now we're creating the data library. It gives you all of the instructions you need to follow to set this up correctly. Now, the first thing we need to do is create this request URL. Again, you can reference the instructions over here, but we're going to need to get our database ID. And this is just the string after the / and before the question mark. So if I go over to our Notion page and I look at the URL, I'm going to go after the / up until the question mark. And this is my database ID. We'll just paste that there so we don't lose it. And what you're going to want to put in front of that is this URL right here. So I'm just going to hit copy, go to the beginning here, paste, and then just remove where it says database ID. Now we need to also enter our authorization key. And to find this key, remember, it is that token that we have just created. So come back to your integration and copy this token here, paste that in there. And the next key we need to enter is the Notion version, which is 2021-08-16. Now, when we need to get all of our records, so this is all articles, we're going to change this to be a post request. And because we want this to query all of our articles, we need to add to the end of the request URL here, /query. If you were using a GET request, you wouldn't need to add this /query to the end. So now if we hit send, you'll see it has received all of that data from our Notion table. Now, this is going to look like a lot compared to the few columns that we do have. But the key thing to look out for is these results here in green. So the first things we're going to want to select is data, data object, and results, because we're pulling in a list. And we can see here that it has received all 5 results. And then what you want to do is just go through and select the data that we're going to be binding to our design. So for example, I have the author name. So obviously I recognize this in the green, and I'm just using the plain text. There is also text content, but I'm just going with the plain text. So once you go through all of this and collect all of the results, you'll end up with something a little bit like this in the request response. And you'll see I've gone through and renamed them all so that it is a little more user-friendly and I don't have to read this whole long string when we go to bind the data to the design. One thing that you need to ensure you change here is data results. You need to name this row ID, and this is really important when we create the request for getting a single article. And this is when we're going to go from our feed, we're going to select something from our feed, and we're going to go to that individual article screen. Now let's go and pull that one article. So once you've set up your query or your articles, we're going to pull just one. So for this, we're going to use a GET request. And the URL here is slightly different. So for querying all of our articles, we used /databases. However, here we're going to say /pages, and then you need to insert this query here, $ curly bracket row ID curly bracket. So this is why it's really important to rename the data result in our other query. So you can hit send, then again, just go through and select the data that you need and rename them. And again, make sure you rename on this one .data.id. You need to change that to row ID. And this is how Bravo knows how to relate these articles and this content together. Next up, let's show our bookmarks list. Now, this is exactly the same URL that we used in our query all articles. So if you want to speed this up, you can just duplicate this one here and rename it. This way it will also copy over your authorization key and your Notion version. You won't need to type those in again. But the difference here is we need to add some JSON code. So head over to the body tab just here and then click on JSON. And what you're going to want to enter here is a filter. So we're wanting to only show articles from our Notion database page that have been checked as being bookmarked. For example, only if it has this check mark here. So the way that we're going to do this is with a little piece of JSON code. The one thing to look out for is making sure you have matching brackets. So these curly braces here, I have 1, 2, 3 open and then 1, 2, 3 closing. If we missed off one of these, then the JSON code would not work. Okay, so what you're going to want to put here is filter, property, and my column, remember, is called bookmarked, but this is where you're going to enter your column name, and it is the checkbox type, right? So remember, this is for your checkbox column. Then you're going to say equals true, and true means this is checked, this is bookmarked, this is the list that we want to now get. So once you've entered this piece of JSON, you can hit send, and you'll see again here, it will pull that same list. So go through and select the data pieces that we're going to want to bind to the design. Okay, next up, we need to set up the API request so that we can edit and amend this bookmarked status. So remember here we have our checkbox and we have our formula. We need to allow Bravo to amend this whenever we are tapping on that bookmark button within the app. So to do this, we're going to set up a couple of patch requests. First off, we'll set up default to active. Now we're going to use that same URL that we did for the one article because a bookmark is related to a single article, not to all of them. So you're going to want to use this here and make sure you've selected patch, add in the authorization and Notion version as before. And again, we're going to add in some JSON code here. So you're going to want to enter properties, bookmarked, or whatever your column is called, checkbox, and then true. And if we send, again, you'll get that same list back, but we don't actually need to select anything here. So you can leave this request response empty because we're not trying to display data. We're just wanting to alter it within the Notion database page. And now we need to do it the other way around. So this one is going from default to active. So look, default to active. So not bookmarked to bookmarked. And now we need to do it the other way around. So if we have bookmarked something and it is showing up in our bookmarks list and we want to take it off of that list, we need to be able to remove the bookmark. So we're going to go and do the same thing, but the opposite way around. So you can duplicate that first patch if you want to make it easier. Head over to body and JSON, and you're going to use the same piece of code here, but the difference is that this needs to say false instead of true. And remember, where I have bookmarked, that is going to be your column name. Bravissimo, you've now set up all of your API requests to start using Notion as your database. Now it is time to bind our data to our design. So head over to your app, open it up, and we're going to start off with our main feed page. This is where we want to get all of our articles back. So in my design, I have feed item. I have this card set up here. I'm going to select that, select my database, set it to query all articles, and then select row ID. So that connection that you had just set up, this is where we're going to bind it here to this container layer. And this container has inside all of those different elements that I need. So I have my headline, so I can select that. And now from the drop down, we can select headline. And you'll see this is where renaming them makes it a lot easier to find what you're looking for. Top tip, if you name your layer in your XD document to match the name of the data you need to bind to it, it's going to be a lot simpler to match things up when you get to this stage. So just go through the design and connect all of those different data points, author, profile picture, the read time, and then we get to our bookmark. And you'll notice that we can expand this and we see two containers here with the lightning bolt symbol. Now remember, the lightning bolt means that there's an action that we can tie to this, right? We've got a remote action to add. And if you remember back in our design, this is because we created a button with two states. So let's go ahead and bind the remote action to that patch API request that we just set up. So you're going to want to open this remote action panel here, select your data collection, select the patch request. Now for active, you're wanting to make it go from active to default because it's already set as active. So we're wanting to set it as default. Okay, on success, you're going to select set state. And this part is really important. So you have the $ and two curly brackets. And inside here, we have bookmarked state. If you remember, that is what we have called this column over here. So you need to make sure those two names match up. And then for default, we're doing the same thing, but the opposite way around. So we're going to use the default to active patch, set the state, and then again, put our string here. $, curly bracket, bookmarked state, curly bracket. And that is it for binding on this screen. Next up, let's do our single article. So we've selected one from our feed and I have my containers here. So I'm going to open this headline one, and from our data collection, when we get the one article, I'm going to select my headline, title as I named it in this one, the date it was posted, the author, that author's photo, and then I have my second container with the article itself, and this is where I'm binding that article text content. And that's it. Now we need to go and do the binding for our bookmarks page. And you'll see I've got my container here for our bookmarked item. So this is where we're going to bind all of our data. First up, you're going to want to connect it to that post query all, fetch all bookmarks request and display it as a list. Again, go through and bind the heading, the author name, and then once we get to our bookmark here, we only have active state. And that's because this screen only shows the active bookmarks that we have saved. So we're going to select this and add our remote action of active to default. So exactly the same as before. Now let's go and set up our social logins. Remember, we have this screen over here. We don't need to do any data binding because this was set up using our Bravo tags. So now let's set this up using Auth0. You're going to want to go into your app project settings here, and underneath login, we're going to enable OAuth 2.0. We're going to set the provider to Auth0, and then we're going to head on over to Auth0. So once you've set up your free account and logged in, you want to hit applications, and you're going to want to create an application. So you can see I've done this before when we created our food delivery app clone. So let's create a new application. We're going to call it Medio to match our app. And this is going to be a regular web application connection. Then you're going to want to navigate to the settings tab here. And we need to add our callback URLs. So scroll down just to here. And then from the Bravo help page, again, these are very handy because it helps us copy and paste and not type everything from scratch. We need to copy these 3 URLs here. So you want to copy this and we're going to paste them in here. And we have to replace this inside of these triangular brackets with our app ID. So head back to Bravo Studio, and our app ID is just this code here within the URL. Paste it here. And then the next thing we need to do is make sure there is a comma and a space between these links. Auth0 won't like it if you just keep them on a new line, and it will fail. So I'm going to use backspace, comma, space, backspace, comma, space. And then scroll all the way to the end and hit save. Now let's head over to authentication and social, and you'll see I have a few connections here already, but you simply want to hit create connection, select the social media that you would like to allow your users to use. So for example, I'll use Microsoft, hit continue. Then you don't need to change anything here. You just want to leave it blank so it uses the Auth0 keys. Hit create, and then select the application you just created. So we just created Medio. So I'm going to switch this on. I can also go back to the other social connections I've already created. And then you'll see from all of these social connections I've already set up, they all say that they're enabled for 3 applications. That's because I have created this a couple of times before. And you'll see that that Windows Live one we have just created is only enabled for our Medio application. So go through and set up the social connections that you would like to use for your application. Now, if you remember over on Bravo Studio, we need to enter our Auth0 domain, the client ID, and the client secret. So head over to applications, select what you have just set up, and you'll see we have those 3 keys here. So you're going to want to copy all of these and paste them in here and hit save. Success! You have now set up social logins. Now for my favorite part, I'm going to test this app using Bravo Vision on my phone. On initial launch of our app, it's going to ask me whether I want to enable notifications. And remember, this is because of the Bravo tag that we attach to this screen. It's always going to show it first on that initial load. Now, our app is not actually published on either of the app stores, so this won't work, but you can now see how you can display this screen. So let's just skip and continue. This takes us to our social logins page, and we can select any of these to sign in with. Let's try Google. And as you can see, it takes us to the Google sign-in page. Here on our home screen, we have a feed of all of our articles from our Notion database. And if I click on our bookmarks tab, you'll see that we have not yet set any bookmarks. So let's go ahead and add a few articles. And there you go, they're now displayed. And if I select one of these, I can open and read the article. Once I'm done, I can remove this from my bookmarks list and pull to refresh. And now I can see that I only have one remaining article to read. Now you've learned how to connect to Notion, what will you be creating? Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more. See you next time.